A Werewolf Shifter Romance. Written by Amelia Hart. Chapter 1. Eclipse's Shadow. The midwife's hands trembled as she pulled the second infant from her dying mother's body. Blood soaked the straw beneath them, too much blood for anyone to survive. The small cottage in Shadowfen Pack territory reeked of death and magic, the air thick with power that only manifested during the rarest of celestial events. Outside, the moon had swallowed the sun whole. Darkness claimed the afternoon sky, turning day into an unnatural night. The eclipse hung overhead like an omen, its corona blazing silver around the void. 2 girls, the midwife breathed, cleaning the squalling infants with shaking hands. The mother, a simple Omega woman named Marin, had already stopped breathing. Her mate, a beta wolf called Torin, knelt beside her body and wept. The first baby's cries filled the cottage, strong and furious despite her premature arrival. The midwife wrapped her in clean cloth, then reached for her twin. This one was quieter, her cries softer, almost questioning. As the old woman cleaned the second infant, moonlight filtered through the window. The eclipse was ending, the sun beginning to emerge. And that was when she saw them. On the right shoulder of the first twin, a mark appeared as if drawn by invisible hands. Silver light traced the shape of a crescent moon, glowing faintly against the baby's skin. The midwife gasped, nearly dropping the child. Before she could speak, the second infant's left shoulder began to shine with identical silver light. Another crescent moon, perfect and luminous, mirror image of her sister's. By all the ancient wolves, the midwife whispered. Her weathered face had gone pale as fresh snow. The prophecy. The marked ones have been born. Torin looked up from his mate's body, tears streaming down his face. What prophecy? What are you talking about? An old text, older than this pack, older than most living memory. It speaks of twins born under Eclipse's shadow, bearing the moon's mark upon their flesh. They are destined to... The door exploded inward. Torin barely had time to shift before the first rogue was upon him. His wolf, brown and lean, snarled and met the attacker with flashing teeth. But there were too many. 6 rogues poured into the cottage, their eyes wild, their sense wrong with madness and bloodlust. The midwife clutched both infants to her chest and ran for the back door. Behind her, Torin fought with desperate fury, buying precious seconds with his life. She heard his death cry as she fled into the chaos outside. Shadowfen Pack was burning. Rogues had swept through the territory like a plague, killing without mercy or reason. Screams echoed through the village. Fire consumed cottages. The metallic stench of blood hung heavy in the air, mixing with smoke and the acrid smell of fear. The midwife was old, her legs weak, her breath coming in gasps. She would not make it far. The babies wailed in her arms, their cries drawing attention she could not afford. A rogue spotted her, his lips pulling back to reveal bloodied fangs. She stumbled, fell, curled her body around the infants to protect them with her own flesh. This was how she would die. At least she could save the marked ones, even if only for a few moments longer. But the killing blow never came. Instead, rough hands grabbed the babies from her arms. The midwife looked up to see men, human men, their clothes marking them as traveling merchants. Slavers. They moved through the destruction with practiced efficiency, gathering valuables, taking the young and healthy who survived. No, the midwife gasped. Please, those babies. They are special. They must be protected. One of the men kicked her in the ribs. Shut up, old woman. Babies fetch good coin, especially healthy ones. They separated the twins immediately, one slaver taking the quieter infant toward his wagon, while another carried her screaming sister in the opposite direction. The midwife watched helplessly as the marked ones were torn apart, their cries fading into the chaos of Shadowfen's destruction. She died there in the blood-soaked dirt, her last thoughts prayers that someone, somehow, would recognize the marks for what they were. 300 miles away, in the royal castle of Valcrest, Prince Calix woke screaming. Fire erupted across his chest, burning so intensely he was certain his flesh was melting. He clawed at his nightshirt, tearing it away, desperate to stop the pain. His younger brother Finian stumbled into the room, drawn by the screams, only to double over with his own cry of agony. What is happening? Calix gasped, his voice raw. He was 9 years old, already training to be a warrior, already learning to hide weakness. But this pain was beyond anything he had ever experienced. Their nursemaid rushed in, followed quickly by guards. When she pulled Calix's torn nightshirt away, she froze. There, burned into the flesh over his heart on the left side of his chest, was a mark that glowed faintly silver. A crescent moon, perfect and impossible. "Prince Finian," she breathed, turning to the younger boy. "Show me your chest." Finian, only 7 years old, lifted his nightshirt with trembling hands. An identical mark sat on the right side of his chest, mirror image of his brother's. The nursemaid's face had gone white. "Fetch the Alpha King." Now. Alpha King Hadrian arrived within minutes, still dressed in the formal robes he had worn to council. His wife had died 2 years prior from a winter sickness, leaving him to raise his sons alone. He was a hard man, forged by loss and responsibility, but seeing his children marked by unknown magic made his hands shake. "Father, what is this?" Calix demanded, his young voice trying for authority despite the fear in his eyes. "Why do we burn?" Hadrian knelt between his sons, examining the marks carefully. He had ruled Valcrest for 11 years, had studied the old texts, had learned the histories. These marks were familiar from ancient prophecies he had read, but never believed would manifest in his lifetime. "You have been marked by fate," Hadrian said quietly. "Somewhere in this kingdom, at this very moment, 2 souls were born who are destined to be your mates. The marks appeared on them first, and the magic has reached across the distance to mark you in return. Mates?" Finian's voice was small, confused. "But I am only 7, and they are newborn," Hadrian confirmed. "The prophecy speaks of marked ones born during an eclipse. You will not meet them until they come of age. But from this moment forward, your fates are bound to theirs." Calix touched the mark on his chest. His jaw set with determination beyond his years. "Then we must find them. Protect them. If they are destined to be our mates, they are already part of our pack." Hadrian nodded, pride and worry warring in his chest. "I will send searchers throughout the kingdom. We will find the marked twins and bring them to safety." But despite years of searching, despite resources devoted to the task, the twins were never found. The slave traders who had taken them left no records. The babies were sold and resold under false names, their marks hidden beneath clothing and lies. Eventually, Hadrian began to believe they had died, victims of the hard life that awaited most slaves. The princes grew up with the marks on their chests, constant reminders of mates they might never meet. 17 years passed. Seren scrubbed the stone floor of the Beta's manor with mechanical precision, her hands red and cracked from years of harsh soap and cold water. At 17, she had known nothing but servitude. The family who owned her claimed they had bought her from traveling merchants when she was an infant, taking her in out of charity. She knew better. There was no charity in this house. "You missed a spot," the Beta's wife snapped, pointing with one elegant finger. "Do it again." Seren bit back the retort that wanted to escape. She had learned early that speaking out only earned beatings. But her eyes, those honey-colored eyes that marked her as different, held defiance even when her mouth stayed silent. The mark on her left shoulder ached beneath her rough servant's dress. It always ached, a constant reminder that she was marked as other, as strange. The family claimed it was just a birthmark, nothing special. But sometimes, late at night, Seren could swear it glowed faintly silver. In another pack, 300 miles away, Leora huddled in the corner of the storage room where she slept. The family who owned her rarely acknowledged her existence except to assign work. She had learned to be invisible, to move through the house like a ghost, drawing no attention. Her right shoulder bore a mark, the mirror of her sister's to her unknown twins. Though she did not know it, she knew only loneliness, silence, and the constant fear that defined her life. But fate, which had marked them at birth, was not finished with the twins yet. In Valcrest Castle, Lord Corvus sat in his private chambers with a vidente, whose eyes had gone milky white with prophecy. He had paid dearly for this divination, but the information was worth any price. "The marked twins live," the seer intoned, her voice hollow and distant. 17 years they have walked this earth. separated and ignorant of their power. One burns with fire that refuses to die. The other moves through shadow, unseen but watching. When they reunite, the lost bloodline of prophecy awakens. The heirs of Valcrest will claim them, and a new era begins. Corvus's hands clenched into fists. He had worked for years positioning his son to potentially inherit the throne should anything happen to the princes. But if these prophesied mates strengthened the line of succession, his plans would crumble. "Where?" he demanded. "Where are they?" The Vidente's head lolled. "Silver Pine." Iron Ridge. Hidden among servants, their marks covered but not destroyed. Find the crescents. Find the twins. It took Corvus 3 weeks to locate them. When his spies brought him descriptions of 2 Omega servants, identical in face and form, both exactly 17 years old, both bearing crescent moon marks, his blood ran cold with recognition and opportunity. Killing them outright would raise questions, but bringing them to the castle as servants, where accidents happened regularly, where poison could be administered slowly, where a convenient fall downstairs could be arranged, that was manageable. He sent his men with forged documents claiming the Alpha King required new kitchen staff. The Pax were only too happy to sell off their unwanted Omegas. Seren was torn from Silverpine after she had the audacity to defend a younger servant from punishment. The Beta was glad for an excuse to be rid of her and her defiant eyes. Leora was taken from Iron Ridge in the dead of night, given no chance to even gather belongings she did not possess. They arrived at Valcrest Castle on the same day, in different wagons, through different gates. Seren was thrust into the scullery, ordered to scrub pots and keep her mouth shut. Leora was sent to the laundry, where silence was expected and easily maintained. Neither knew the other existed. Neither knew they had just entered the home of their destined mates. Neither knew that 17 years of separation were about to end in the most impossible way. It was Seren who saw her first. 3 days after arriving, she was carrying a heavy basket of turnips from the root cellar when she rounded a corner and nearly collided with someone carrying linens. Both stopped abruptly. Seren found herself staring into her own face. Same brown hair, same honey eyes, same height and build, and features down to the smallest detail. It was like looking into a mirror, except the reflection moved independently, wore different clothes, held different things. The other girl's eyes went wide with identical shock. "Who?" Seren began, her voice barely a whisper. "Move along! No standing idle in the corridors!" The harsh voice of the head housekeeper shattered the moment. The other girl, her twin, it had to be her twin, looked at Seren one more time with desperate yearning, then hurried away with her laundry. Seren stood frozen, the basket of turnips forgotten, until the housekeeper's hand cracked across her shoulder. Deaf as well as lazy? I said move. Serene moved, but her mind raced. A twin. She had a twin sister. Someone who shared her face, her blood, possibly her strange mark. The loneliness that had defined her entire life suddenly felt less absolute. In the royal wing of the castle, Prince Calix stood before his father, reporting on the day's training exercises. But his hand kept moving to his chest, pressing against the mark that had burned for the first time in years. "Are you injured?" Hadrian asked, concern sharpening his voice. "No, father. It is the mark. It burns as it did the night it appeared." Calix's ice-blue eyes were troubled. "Something has changed. I can feel it." In another part of the castle, Prince Finian clutched his own chest, gasping at the sudden heat. His younger heart was more open to possibility, to magic, to fate. "They are here," he whispered to himself. "After all these years, they are finally here." From the shadows of a high balcony, Lord Corvus watched the servants moving through the courtyards below. Somewhere among them were 2 Omega twins who threatened everything he had built. But they were powerless here, ignorant of their significance, vulnerable. Soon, very soon, they would meet with an unfortunate accident, and Corvus's path to power would be clear once more. What he did not know was that fate, which had brought the marked ones together, was a force far stronger than any mortal ambition. The prophecy had waited 17 years to fulfill itself. It would not wait much longer. Chapter 2. Recognition. The royal kitchens of Valcrest Castle were a symphony of controlled chaos every morning. 20 servants moved in careful coordination, their movements honed by years of routine under the watchful eye of Cook Marjorie, a woman whose sharp tongue was matched only by her sharper wooden spoon. Serene had been working here for 5 days, and she had already learned the unspoken rules. Keep your head down. Move quickly. Never draw attention. The same lessons she had learned in Silverpine, applied to a grander scale. She scrubbed pots in the corner, her hands submerged in water hot enough to sting, but she kept her eyes on everything happening around her, the way Marjorie favored certain servants while terrorizing others, the guard rotations that passed through the kitchens, the best times to move through corridors unnoticed. Information was survival, even here in the castle that was supposed to be safer than anywhere she had lived before. All kitchen staff, attention! The head steward's voice cut through the noise like a blade. Everyone stopped working immediately, arranging themselves in neat lines. Prince Calix is conducting a security inspection of the western wing. The corridor passes through the storage area behind the kitchens. We need servants to ensure the passage is clear and presentable for his inspection. Seren saw the other servants exchange nervous glances. She had heard whispers about the western wing. It had been closed for renovations. Loose stones, unstable beams, sections of ceiling that could collapse without warning. It was dangerous work, and everyone knew it. You three. The steward pointed at random servants without looking too closely. Come with me now. One was a girl who could not have been more than 14, her thin arms already scarred from kitchen burns. Another was an elderly man whose limp was obvious even when he tried to hide it. The third was a woman who had been coughing for days, her face pale and drawn. None of them would be able to move quickly if something went wrong. Wait. Seren set down her scrubbing brush and stood, her voice clear despite the way her heart hammered. I will go instead. The steward frowned, clearly unused to servants volunteering for anything, let alone dangerous assignments. You were not chosen. I am stronger than those three. Faster. She met his eyes steadily, the same defiance that had gotten her into trouble in Silverpine rising despite her best efforts to suppress it. If there is danger, I can react. Let them continue their work here where it is safe. Cook Marjorie started to protest. She hated when servants spoke out of turn, but the steward held up a hand. He studied Seren for a long moment, taking in her straight posture, her clear eyes, the way she did not flinch under his scrutiny. Very well, he said finally. You two. He gestured to 2 other able-bodied servants. Come as well. The rest of you, back to work. The western wing was worse than Seren had imagined. Scaffolding leaned at angles that made her nervous just looking at them. Piles of stone and timber blocked parts of the corridor, forcing them to climb over debris. Dust hung thick in the air, coating their lungs with every breath. They worked quickly, moving the smaller pieces of rubble, sweeping pathways clear, making the space presentable for royal inspection. Serene was carrying a heavy support beam toward a storage alcove when she heard footsteps approaching. Multiple sets, the measured tread of guards escorting someone important. Prince Calix entered the corridor with 4 guards flanking him. Even in dim light filtered through dust-covered windows, he was imposing, tall and broad-shouldered, moving with the kind of unconscious grace that came from a lifetime of combat training. His dark hair was slightly disheveled, and those ice-blue eyes swept the passage with sharp, assessing intelligence. Serene pressed herself against the wall with the other servants, head bowed in the respectful posture expected of her station, but she could not help watching from beneath her lashes, drawn by something she could not name. Calix paused when his inspection reached where they stood. His gaze moved over each servant in turn, then stopped on Seren. She felt the weight of his attention settle over her skin, raising goosebumps despite the heat of exertion. You, he said, his voice neither particularly kind nor cruel. Look at me. Seren raised her head slowly, meeting those ice-blue eyes. Something flickered across his face too quickly to identify. Surprise? Recognition? Impossible. They had never met. What are you doing here? His tone was level, simply requesting information. Clearing the passage for your inspection, Your Highness. You volunteered for this task? Yes, Your Highness. Why? The question surprised her. Why would a prince care about a servant's motivations? Because others were chosen who would have been at greater risk in this unstable area. I am more capable of handling potential danger. Calix's eyes narrowed slightly, studying her with new intensity. You assess your own capabilities highly. I observe what others miss, Your Highness. I see clearly. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he turned to the steward who had accompanied the inspection. This one is wasted scrubbing pots. Reassign her to the royal chamber staff. The steward blinked, clearly surprised. Your Highness? I want servants who can think independently, not just follow orders without question. She will assist in maintaining my wing of the castle. Calix looked at Seren again, something unreadable in his expression. Report to the head of household tomorrow morning. She will assign your new duties. Yes, Your Highness? Seren's heart raced, though whether from opportunity or apprehension she could not tell. Follow me now. I will show you to your work area. She had no choice but to obey. Calix led her through corridors that grew progressively grander as they walked. Rough stone giving way to polished marble. Simple torches replaced by elegant oil lamps and bronze fixtures. Guards stood at attention as they passed. Other servants scattered out of the prince's path, like birds before a storm. They reached a hallway lined with doors bearing the royal crest worked in gold. Calix stopped and turned to face her. His guards remained at the corridor entrance, giving them a moment of relative privacy. What is your name? He asked. Seren, Your Highness. Seren. He said it slowly, as if testing how the syllables felt. His hand moved unconsciously to his chest, pressing against something beneath his tunic. You do not carry yourself as most servants do. How should I carry myself, Your Highness? Most would not meet my eyes as you do. Most would not speak so directly. Would you prefer I cower and lie? The words escaped before Seren could stop them. She tensed, bracing for punishment. Instead, something that might have been amusement crossed Calix's face. No, I would not prefer that. He gestured toward her. Your sleeve. Push it up. Your left arm. Serene's blood went cold. No one ever asked about the mark. It was just a birthmark. Meaningless. Strange, but harmless. But the way he said it, the intensity burning in his gaze, suggested he knew something she did not. Slowly, she pushed up her left sleeve and adjusted the neckline of her rough dress to fully reveal her shoulder. The crescent moon mark sat there, silvery against her skin. Calix stared at it for what felt like an eternity. Then, without warning, he reached out and touched it. Lightning. That was the only word for what happened. Pure electricity arced between them, so intense that Seren cried out. Her knees buckled, and Calix caught her arm instinctively, but the additional contact only amplified the sensation. Every nerve ending in her body sang with energy. She could feel his heartbeat as if it were her own, thundering and erratic. She could sense his shock mirroring her own, his confusion matching hers beat for beat. Calix released her abruptly and stepped back. His hand shook slightly before he clenched it into a fist. They stared at each other, both breathing hard, both trying to process what had just happened. What was that? Seren gasped, her shoulder still tingling where his fingers had touched. I do not know, but there was something in his eyes that suggested he was lying, or at least not telling the complete truth. He turned away, presenting his back to her in clear dismissal. Report tomorrow morning as instructed. Tell no one about what just occurred. Is that understood? Yes, Your Highness. Go. Seren left quickly, not quite running but moving as fast as dignity allowed. Her mind raced the entire walk back to the servants' quarters. That connection, that impossible surge of power when their skin touched. It was not natural. It was not normal. It meant something, but what? She needed to find that girl, the one with her face. She needed answers. That same evening, Prince Finian walked through the castle gardens as twilight settled over Valcrest. He often came here when his thoughts grew too tangled, when the pressure of living in his brother's shadow became suffocating. Calix was everything a future king should be. Strong, decisive, confident. Finian was the spare, the younger brother who would always be compared and found wanting. The night air cooled his heated thoughts. He walked familiar paths without needing much light, his enhanced shifter vision picking out every detail. His feet carried him toward the secluded bench near the fountain where he often sat alone to think. Someone was already there. A girl sat on the ground, with her back against the stone bench, arms wrapped around her knees. She was so still, she might have been carved from the same stone, except for the faint trembling of her shoulders, that even she could not quite suppress. Finian approached quietly, not wanting to startle her. Are you all right? She flinched violently anyway, her head snapping up. Even in growing darkness, Finian could see her features clearly with his shifter sight. She looked exactly like someone Calix had mentioned at dinner. The servant he had reassigned to the royal wing, the one who had impressed him with her courage and sharp tongue. But this could not be the same girl. The resemblance was perfect. But everything else was different. Your Highness. Her voice was barely more than a whisper. She scrambled to stand, but her legs seemed unsteady beneath her. Please, do not run. Finian kept his voice soft, gentle. I simply want to ensure you are well. I am fine, Your Highness. I should not be here. I will return to my quarters. Wait. He moved closer carefully, and she went very still, like prey freezing before a predator. Have we met before? You look familiar. No, Your Highness. I only arrived at the castle recently. I work in the laundry. The laundry. Not the royal chambers. Not the kitchens. This was definitely not the same girl Calix had mentioned. What is your name? Leora, Your Highness. Leora. The name suited her somehow, soft and musical. That is a beautiful name. It means light in the old tongue. She nodded, still not meeting his eyes fully. You can look at me, you know. I do not bite. He tried for a gentle smile, despite what rumors might say about princes and wolves. That earned him the briefest flicker of a glance before her eyes darted away again. But in that moment, Finian saw them clearly. Honey-colored, the exact shade Calix had described when talking about Seren. The same unusual color that Finian had dreamed about since he was 7 years old. Since the night a mark burned itself into his chest, his heart began to race. You seem distressed, he observed carefully. Has something happened? Has someone hurt you? No, Your Highness. She trailed off, clearly terrified to speak honestly to a prince. You are safe here, Finian said gently. No one comes to this part of the gardens at night except me. Whatever you need to say, you can speak freely. She looked at him again, longer this time, searching his face for deception and apparently finding none. I saw someone today, someone who looked exactly like me. I thought I had imagined it, but I cannot stop thinking about it. I have never had family, never had anyone who shared my blood. But that girl, you did not imagine it. Finian's mind was racing now. There is another servant in this castle who shares your face precisely. Her name is Seren. My brother reassigned her to the royal wing today. Leora's eyes widened. How is that possible? How can two people look so alike? You must be twins. Sisters separated somehow when you were very young. Finian took another step closer. She did not retreat this time. May I ask you something that might seem strange? She nodded hesitantly. Do you have any unusual marks on your body? Birthmarks that have always been there that you were born with? Her hand moved instinctively to her left shoulder, betraying the answer before she spoke it. Show me, Finian said quietly. Please. I think it might be very important. With trembling hands, Leora pulled aside the neckline of her dress, just far enough to reveal the crescent moon mark on her right shoulder. Finian's chest erupted with burning sensation, exactly where his own mark lay hidden beneath his shirt. The feeling was so intense he had to press a hand against it, gasping slightly. You have one too, Leora said softly. It was not a question. I can see it in your face. You feel it burning. Since I was 7 years old, Finian confirmed, working to control his breathing. The mark appeared one night without any warning or explanation. My brother has one as well, though his is on the left side of his chest where mine is on the right. What does it mean? I do not know. But I intend to find out. He heard footsteps approaching. A guard on patrol. You should go back to your quarters. It is not safe for you to be out here alone after dark. But tomorrow, during the afternoon rest period, come to the castle library. We need to talk more. About the marks. About your twin. Your Highness, I am not permitted I am giving you permission. Tell anyone who questions you that you are running an errand for me personally. I will inform the head of household to expect you. Before Leora could respond, the guard called out, Prince Finian, your father requests your presence in his study. By the time Finian turned back to where Leora had been standing, she had vanished into the shadows like a ghost. Finian made his way to his father's study, his thoughts churning. When he arrived, he found Calix already there, looking as unsettled as Finian felt. His older brother was rarely unsettled by anything. You felt it too, Calix said without preamble, the moment their father stepped out to speak with an advisor. The marks. Yes, and there are 2 of them. 2 girls who look identical. Finian kept his voice low. I spoke with one tonight. Her name is Leora. She works in the laundry. She has a mark on her right shoulder. The exact pattern I have dreamed about since I was a child. Serene has the same mark, Calix said slowly, his expression troubled. When I touched it, he shook his head, clearly disturbed by whatever had happened. There was a connection. Something impossible. They must be the twins from the prophecy, Finian said, his voice carrying conviction his brother lacked. Born during the eclipse 17 years ago. The mates the marks promised us. Calix's jaw tightened. That is assuming you believe in prophecies and predetermined fate. I do not. Brother, how can you deny what is right in front of us? We carry marks that appeared the moment they were born. Now they are here. Identical twins with matching marks. Tell me that means nothing. It could be coincidence. An extraordinarily unlikely one, but there is no such thing as coincidence on this scale. Finian's frustration leaked into his voice. Why can you not simply accept that some things are beyond logic and strategy? That destiny exists? Before Calix could respond, their father returned with Lord Corvus at his side. The counselor's expression was carefully neutral, but something about him always made Finian's instincts prickle with warning. Your Highnesses, Corvus said smoothly. I hope I am not interrupting an important discussion. We were discussing some of the new servants, Calix said carefully, his tone giving nothing away. Nothing that concerns the council. Ah, yes, the twin Omegas. Corvus's smile did not reach his eyes. Quite curious, are they not? Identical in every way, or so I am told. You have been making inquiries about servants? Finian's voice sharpened despite his best efforts to sound casual. I make inquiries about everything that concerns the safety of this castle and the royal family, Corvus replied smoothly. These girls appeared at precisely the same time, looking exactly alike. It raises certain questions. Calix leaned forward slightly. What sort of questions? Well, in these troubled times one cannot be too careful. There are pacts who would send infiltrators into the royal household. Using magic to make 2 unrelated girls appear identical would be a clever strategy. Plant them separately, have them play innocent and helpless, gain the trust of the princes. He let the implication hang in the air. You think they are spies? Finian's hands clenched into fists below the table where no one could see. I merely suggest that investigation would be prudent, Your Highness, for the safety of the crown. Question them separately. See if their stories align. If they are genuine, they have nothing to fear from honest inquiry. Calix nodded slowly, his strategic mind already working through the scenario. You may be right. We should verify their backgrounds and intentions. Finian, have both girls brought for formal questioning tomorrow. Separately. We will determine if they pose any threat. Brother, Finian began, but Calix cut him off. This is not a matter for debate. Our personal curiosity about their marks is secondary to ensuring they are not a danger to father or the kingdom. They are 17-year-old girls with no pack, no resources, no power. Finian protested. What possible threat could they pose? That is what we will determine through questioning. Calix's voice carried the weight of his position as elder and future king. Lord Corvus, arrange for the girls to be brought to the council chamber tomorrow morning. Separately, we will interview them there. Before dawn the next day, Calix issued a sealed order requiring that any interview be conducted in the presence of the head healer and the castle's legal scribe, with Lord Corvus explicitly barred from the chamber. Guards were instructed to remain outside, and questions were limited to establishing identity and safety risks. No threats, no raised voices, trauma-aware procedure, as befit witnesses and potential victims. Corvus bowed, triumph gleaming in his eyes, though he kept his expression respectful. As you command, Your Highness. I will see to it personally. As Corvus left, Finian turned on his brother. You are letting him manipulate you. Those girls are not spies. You know it as well as I do. I know nothing yet, Calix said coldly, and neither do you. Until we verify their identities and intentions, we treat them as potential threats. That is what a responsible leader does. They are not threats. They are terrified girls who have clearly suffered. Enough. Calix stood, ending the discussion through sheer force of presence. The decision is made. Prepare yourself for tomorrow's questioning. Finian left the study, frustration and worry warring in his chest. He had seen the terror in Leora's eyes, the way she flinched at sudden movements. She was no spy. She was a victim of something, and now Calix was about to make her situation worse. In a shadowed corridor overlooking the servants' quarters, Lord Corvus watched with satisfaction as guards moved into position. Tomorrow the girls would be interrogated, their composure shaken, their vulnerabilities exposed. And then, when the time was right, they would meet with a convenient accident. His path to power was still secure. The prophecy would not be fulfilled. His son would inherit the throne. All he had to do was eliminate 2 Omega girls before anyone realized how important they truly were. Chapter 3. Moon's Dance. The announcement came 3 days after the interrogations. The festival of the full moon would be held in 5 days' time, a tradition as old as Valcrest itself. Every member of the castle, from the highest noble to the lowest servant, was required to participate. Saren heard about it while carrying linens through the royal wing. The other servants buzzed with nervous excitement. The festival meant extra work, but also better food, wine, and a rare night where the castle's rigid hierarchies softened slightly. "They say the Alpha King himself will attend this year," one maid whispered as they worked. "First time in nearly a decade. Probably wants to see the twin Omegas everyone gossips about," another replied with a nervous giggle. "Identical down to the last detail. Unnatural, if you ask me." Saren kept her head down, hands moving mechanically. Unnatural. She had heard that word more than once since arriving. People stared, whispered, made signs against evil when she and her twin passed, as if being identical was some sort of curse. She needed to find Leora. They had barely spoken since the interrogations 3 days ago, kept deliberately separate by order of Prince Calix. But festival preparations would require all servants working together. Her chance came 2 days before the festival. The Great Hall needed decorating, and every available hand was called to help. Garlands of autumn leaves, wreaths of wheat, lanterns of colored glass, all had to be carried from storage and arranged throughout the massive space. Saren spotted Leora immediately, half hidden behind stacks of crates, arranging dried flowers into bundles. Their eyes met across the hall, and understanding passed between them wordlessly. When the supervisors were distracted directing other workers, Saren made her way to the supply room. Moments later, Leora slipped in behind her. They stood facing each other in the dim space, neither speaking at first. Then Saren reached out and took Leora's hand. Warmth flooded through both of them at the contact, familiar and right. "I have been looking for you," Saren said quietly. "And I for you." Leora's voice trembled. "The interrogation. Did they hurt you?" "No. But Prince Calix asked many questions about where I came from, whether I was sent by anyone." Saren squeezed her twin's hand. "I told the truth, that I know nothing except servitude. Prince Finian was kinder during mine," Leora whispered. "But I could barely speak. I was so afraid. Listen to me." Serene gripped both of Leora's hands now. "We need to understand what is happening. We look identical. We both have these marks. We both arrived here at the same time. This cannot all be coincidence. What if we are sisters?" Leora asked, voicing what both had been thinking. "Twins? Separated when we were babies? Then someone separated us deliberately, and someone brought us both here, to this castle, at the same moment." Serene's mind worked through the puzzle. The princes have marks too. They reacted when they saw ours. There is a connection we do not understand yet. What do? We find answers. Quietly. The castle has records, birth documents, old texts. If there is information about us, about these marks, we need to find it ourselves. Before they could say more, voices approached. They sprang apart, both grabbing decorations to carry out. As they passed each other in the doorway, Saren whispered, "The night of the festival, there will be chaos. We search then." Leora nodded almost imperceptibly. The evening of the festival arrived with unseasonable warmth. The great hall had been transformed into something from a dream. Hundreds of candles and oil lamps created a golden glow. Tables groaned under platters of roasted venison, fresh bread, autumn fruits, and casks of wine and ale. Musicians tuned instruments in the gallery while nobles and servants alike gathered in their finest clothes. Seren wore a simple dress of deep blue, the best she owned. When she saw Leora across the hall, her breath caught. Her twin wore an identical dress in the same shade. They had not planned it, had not even spoken about what to wear, yet somehow they had chosen the same color, as if drawn by the same instinct. Alpha King Hadrian entered last, and silence fell over the hall. He looked older than Seren had imagined. Hair streaked with silver, face lined with years of burden, but power radiated from every line of his body. Authority that needed no words. He took his place at the high table, flanked by his sons. Prince Calix looked uncomfortable in formal attire, his jaw tight with what might have been tension. His ice-blue eyes scanned the crowd restlessly until they found Seren. She felt the weight of that gaze, the way it made her heart race despite her best efforts to remain composed. Prince Finian seemed more at ease, but his attention kept drifting to where Leora stood, half hidden behind a pillar, as if he could not help but seek her out, even in the crowded room. The feast began with entertainment, jugglers, acrobats, a bard singing old ballads. Wine flowed freely, and gradually the formality gave way to celebration. Then the master of ceremonies called for the traditional Omega dance. Seren's blood went cold. She had heard of this ritual but never witnessed it. Unmated Omegas danced to honor the moon, asking for her blessing in finding true mates. It was ancient tradition, supposedly going back to the first shifters. All unmated Omegas to the center of the hall, the master called. A dozen young women moved forward nervously. Seren tried to melt into the shadows, but hands pushed her forward. She found herself in the circle of dancers, aware of every eye upon her. "I do not know the steps," she hissed to the woman beside her. "Just follow along. The dance is instinctive. The moon guides us." The musicians began playing a haunting melody unlike anything Seren had heard before. It seemed to come from somewhere ancient and deep, a rhythm that spoke to something primal in her chest. The other dancers began moving, their steps graceful and flowing. Seren stood frozen, panic rising. She had never danced. Certainly not something this complex. She would humiliate herself before the entire court. But then the melody swelled, and something in her chest responded. A pull, insistent and impossible to ignore. Her body moved without conscious thought, feet finding steps she had never learned, arms lifting in patterns that felt written into her bones. Across the hall, hidden near the servants' entrance, Leora watched. And as the music played, the same pull seized her. Before she knew what she was doing, her feet were moving. Her arms mirrored Seren's perfectly. They were separated by half the hall. Yet they danced in flawless unison. The other Omegas faltered and stopped, staring. The musicians played on, transfixed. The entire hall fell silent, except for that ancient melody and the whisper of two sets of feet, moving in impossible synchronization. Seren's eyes found Leora's across the distance. In that moment, recognition deeper than memory passed between them. A bond that had existed before birth, severed by cruelty, now reforming with every matched step. The marks on their shoulders burned silver beneath their dresses, glowing faintly through the fabric. At the high table, Calix pressed a hand to his chest, where his own mark flared to life. Beside him, Finian did the same, gasping softly. Alpha King Hadrian stood abruptly, his chair scraping against stone. His face had gone pale, his hands gripping the table edge hard. He saw them fully now. Two girls dancing a ritual his own mate had performed before their bonding, and the marks, glowing silver, visible even from this distance. They were the ones from the prophecy, the marked twins, finally revealed. He needed to protect them, but exposing them now would put them in immediate danger. Lord Corvus watched from across the hall with calculating eyes. The dance ended. Seren and Leora stood frozen, staring at each other as applause erupted around them. Neither had any memory of learning those steps, yet they had performed them flawlessly. Extraordinary, someone murmured. Unnatural, another hissed. Hadrian rose with deliberate control. "I am retiring for the evening. The celebration may continue." He left quickly, his mind racing. In his private chambers, he sent for his most trusted advisors and ancient texts on prophecy. He needed confirmation before acting. In the great hall, the celebration continued. But the mood had shifted. Lord Corvus watched the twins with cold calculation. The Alpha King's reaction had been revealing. If Hadrian suspected their importance, Corvus needed to accelerate his plans. Later that night, while the castle still buzzed with festival energy, Seren and Leora met in the darkened corridors. Using the chaos as cover, they made their way to where records were kept. The door was locked, but Seren had watched where keys were stored. Her fingers worked quickly, and the door swung open silently. Inside, shelves stretched high, packed with scrolls and bound volumes. They searched by candlelight, pulling document after document. Here, Leora breathed, unrolling a scroll marked with faded ink. She read aloud, her voice trembling. Attack on Shadowfen Pack during eclipse. 17 years past. Multiple casualties. 2 infant daughters of Marin and Torin, both Omegas, marked with crescent moons, taken by slavers. No further record. Seren grabbed the scroll, staring at the words. Shadowfen. That was our home. Those were our parents. They died protecting us, Leora whispered, tears streaming down her face. And someone took us. Sold us. They looked at each other as the truth crashed over them. They were not just twins. They were survivors of a massacre, stolen and separated, their entire history erased. The prince's marks appeared when we were born, Seren said slowly. The prophecy linked us before we could even understand. We need to tell someone, Leora said. The Alpha King needs to know. He might already know. Did you see his face during the dance? Seren's voice dropped. But if he knows, why has he not said anything? Because there is still danger. Whoever destroyed Shadowfen, whoever sold us, they might still be here. They stood in the record room, 2 girls who had been nothing discovering they were part of something ancient and powerful, and neither knew if that knowledge would save them or condemn them. Chapter 4. Threads of Fate. The training yard was deserted when Calix arrived before dawn. He preferred it this way, the quiet hours when no one would question why a prince was spending time with a servant. He had told himself this was practical. If Seren worked in the royal wing, she needed to know how to defend herself. The castle had enemies, and those close to the royal family were often targets. It was a reasonable justification. It was also a lie. The truth was that he could not stop thinking about her, about the mark on her shoulder and the lightning that had passed between them when he touched it, about the way she met his eyes without flinching, the way she challenged him as no one else dared, about how his chest burned whenever she was near. You are late, he said when Seren finally appeared, slipping through the shadows. I had to wait for the other servants to settle for the night. She approached cautiously, eyeing the practice weapons he had laid out. You truly intend to teach me? I do. Can you handle a blade? I have scrubbed kitchen knives for years. Does that count? The corner of his mouth twitched, almost a smile. Not exactly. We will start with basics. Stance, balance, awareness. He moved behind her, adjusting her posture with careful hands that still managed to make her skin prickle with awareness. Plant your feet wider. You are too narrow. Anyone could knock you over. Seren adjusted, but the proximity of his body made concentration difficult. Like this? Better. His breath was warm against her ear. Now, if someone grabs you from behind, what do? Scream for help? What if there is no help coming? She thought for a moment. Kick backward. Aim for the knee. Good instinct. But you need more. He demonstrated, his hands on her shoulders, not gripping hard, just showing position. Drop your weight suddenly. Twist at the waist. Use the attacker's momentum against them. They practiced the movement several times. Each time, Calix's hands on her became more distracting. Each time, Seren found it harder to concentrate on the lesson and easier to focus on his scent, his warmth, the controlled power in his body. Again, he commanded. This time I will actually hold you. Try to break free. His arms circled her from behind, firm, but not painful. Serene's heart hammered. She tried the technique, dropping her weight and twisting. But Calix was ready, adjusting his grip to compensate. Too predictable, he said against her hair. Try something I will not expect. Seren stopped thinking and acted on instinct. She stomped on his foot, elbowed back hard, then twisted in a direction he had not anticipated. For a moment, she was free. Then he caught her wrist, spinning her to face him. They were chest to chest now, both breathing hard. His ice-blue eyes held hers, and something dangerous flickered in their depths. "Better," he said, his voice rough. "Much better. Let go of my wrist, Your Highness." "Make me." It was a challenge, a provocation. Serene tilted her head, considering. Then she smiled, slow and deliberate. "You are afraid of what happens if you do not." Calix's grip tightened fractionally. "I am not afraid of anything." "Liar." She leaned closer, close enough to feel his breath hitch. "You are afraid of this, of whatever it is between us. That mark on your chest burns when I am near, does it not? The same way mine does. You presume much, servant." "Do I? Then prove me wrong. Let me go. Walk away." For a long moment neither moved. The air between them crackled with tension and something deeper, more primal. Then Calix released her abruptly, stepping back as if she had burned him. "That is all for today. Same time tomorrow." He left without looking back. But Seren saw the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands clenched into fists. She had rattled him, and despite everything, her servitude, his royalty, the impossibility of anything between them, she was glad. Across the castle, in the quiet sanctuary of the royal library, Finian watched Leora trace her fingers over ancient texts with reverent care. He had brought her here during the afternoon rest period, claiming she was running an errand for him. She had arrived terrified, certain this was some trap. But gradually, surrounded by books and his patient presence, she had begun to relax. "You read beautifully," he observed. "Where did you learn?" "The family that owned me had a small collection. I was not supposed to touch them." Her voice grew quieter. "But late at night, when everyone slept, I would sneak into the study. Books were my only escape. They took me to places where girls like me could be free." Finian's chest ached at the loneliness in her words. "You are free now. Am I? I am still a servant, Your Highness. Still powerless. Power comes in many forms. Knowledge is one of them." He gestured to the shelves surrounding them. "All of this is yours to explore, whenever you wish. I will make certain no one questions your presence here." Leora looked at him with those honey-colored eyes that haunted his dreams. "Why are you being kind to me?" "Because you deserve kindness." He hesitated, then decided on honesty. "Because something in me recognizes something in you. I cannot explain it better than that. The marks." "Yes, but more than the marks." He moved closer carefully. "When I am near you, the world feels less heavy. As if I have been carrying a weight I did not know was there, and your presence lightens it." A faint blush colored Leora's cheeks. "I feel it too. Like I can breathe properly for the first time." They sat in companionable silence for a while. Leora reading passages aloud, Finian listening, and occasionally adding his own observations. Eventually she shared fragments of her childhood. The isolation, the fear, the way she had learned to become invisible to survive. "I lived in my brother's shadow," Finian offered in return. "Calix is everything I am supposed to be. Strong, decisive, certain. I am the spare. The one who will never be quite good enough no matter what I achieve. That must be its own kind of prison." "It is. Though mine has gilded bars compared to yours." Leora set down her book and looked at him directly. "Pain is not a competition, Your Highness. Your struggles do not diminish because others suffer differently." The wisdom in her words, coming from someone who had endured so much, made something crack open in Finian's chest. Before he could think better of it, he reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. His fingers brushed the edge of her mark, and both gasped at the contact. "I am sorry," he said quickly, pulling back. "I should not have. It did not hurt." Leora's hand came up to touch the spot where his fingers had been. It felt warm. "Right." For the first time since arriving at the castle, Leora laughed. Not a bitter sound or a fearful one, but genuine, clear joy. Only you would call a birthmark beautiful. It is not just a birthmark. It is proof of something larger than us. He looked at her seriously. Of destiny, perhaps. In the storage room they had begun using for secret meetings, Seren found Leora waiting. The moment they were close, both felt it. A surge of awareness that made their skin tingle and their senses sharpen dramatically. "Do you feel that?" Seren whispered. "Every time we are together, it grows stronger." Leora gripped her twin's hands. Earlier today, I could smell every shifter in the library. All of them at once. Their individual scents. I have never been able to do that before. I tracked a guard's movements through 3 corridors by scent alone, Seren said, her eyes bright. I knew exactly where he was, what direction he faced, even his emotional state. Our wolves are waking up, Leora. Being together is making us stronger. They experimented cautiously, holding hands and focusing. The sensation intensified. Both could suddenly feel dozens of shifters throughout the castle, their locations and emotions creating a map in their minds. This is incredible, Leora breathed. If we can do this, we need to understand why, and I think our answers are in those records we found. Seren's expression turned determined. We know we came from Shadow Fenpack. We know we were sold, but there has to be more. That night, they returned to the record room. Using the heightened senses their combined presence provided, they searched more thoroughly. It was Seren who found the additional entry, tucked in a volume of royal prophecies. Listen to this, she read aloud. Twins marked by Eclipse's shadow shall find mates marked in mirror. When reunited, their power shall be fourfold. But beware, those who fear change will seek to destroy what destiny has joined. They looked at each other, the implications settling over them. The princes, Leora said slowly. They are our destined mates. That is what the marks mean. And someone here fears that. Seren's jaw set. Someone who brought us here not to fulfill prophecy but to kill us before it could happen. Meanwhile, Lord Corvus sat in the council chamber with other advisors, his expression grave. The twin Omegas continue to exert inappropriate influence over the princes. Prince Calyx trains with one privately. Prince Finian spends hours alone with the other in the library. This cannot continue. What do you propose? Another counselor asked. Banishment. Remove them from the castle entirely. Send them to distant packs where they can do no harm. On what grounds? A third counselor challenged. They have committed no crime. They disrupt the natural order. They distract the heirs from their duties. Is that not grounds enough? The council debated, but ultimately brought the matter before Alpha King Hadrian. Corvus made his case eloquently, painting the twins as dangerous distractions who threatened the stability of the royal household. Hadrian listened in silence, his expression unreadable. When Corvus finished, the Alpha King spoke with cold finality. No, the Omegas stay. Your Majesty, surely you see the danger. I see clearly, Lord Corvus. Perhaps more clearly than you realize. Hadrian's eyes were hard. The matter is closed. The girls remain under my protection. It was the first time Hadrian had openly contradicted his counsel on such a matter. Murmurs of surprise and concern rippled through the chamber. Corvus's face remained carefully neutral, but fury burned in his eyes. After the council dismissed, Corvus returned to his chambers and sent for his most trusted operative. The Alpha King protects them openly now. We cannot wait any longer. Prepare your men. Tomorrow night, the twins die. Make it look like an accident. A fire in the servants' quarters, perhaps. But ensure they do not survive. And the princes? They will mourn and move on. Without the Omegas to fulfill the prophecy, my path remains clear. What Corvus did not know was that the twins' heightened senses, amplified by their proximity, had detected his malice. They did not know the details of his plan yet, but they knew danger was coming. And for the first time in their lives, they were not helpless victims waiting for fate to crush them. They were marked by destiny, and destiny had teeth. Chapter 5. Blood and Truth. The summons came at midnight. A guard whose face was grim delivered the message personally to each of them. Prince Calyx, Prince Finian, you are to report to the Alpha King's private chambers immediately. Bring the servants Seren and Leora with you. Calyx exchanged a glance with his brother across the corridor. Their father never summoned anyone at this hour unless the matter was urgent, and including 2 Omega servants in a royal meeting was unprecedented. Within minutes, all 4 stood before a heavy oak door, carved with ancient symbols. The guard knocked once, then stepped aside. The door opened, revealing not the study they expected, but a circular chamber carved from black stone. Candles floated impossibly in midair, their flames casting dancing shadows across walls etched with glowing runes. A protection circle, Finian breathed. Father, what is happening? Alpha King Hadrian stood at the center, looking older than either of his sons had ever seen him. Deep lines bracketed his mouth, and his silver-streaked hair seemed to have gained more gray in recent weeks. But his eyes, when they lifted to meet the twins, held something that made Serene's breath catch: recognition, certainty, and profound relief. "Enter," Hadrian commanded, his voice rough with emotion. "What I am about to tell you cannot leave this room. The magic here ensures no one can hear or scry what happens within these walls." They entered cautiously. Serene felt the magic settle over her skin like cool mist. Beside her, Leora trembled. Hadrian gestured for them to sit, but no one moved. The tension was too thick. "You wonder why I summoned you here at midnight," Hadrian began. "Why these two servants stand beside my sons in a magically protected chamber." He turned fully to face Serene and Leora. "The answer is both miraculous and tragic." His voice strengthened. "You are the twins from the prophecy. Born during the eclipse 17 years ago in Shadowfen Pack, your parents were simple Omegas, Marin and Tauren, good wolves who died protecting their village from rogues. When you were born, these marks appeared." He gestured to their shoulders. Crescent moons, glowing silver in the darkness. Serene's knees weakened. Leora's hand found hers. "At the exact moment of your birth," Hadrian continued, "these marks burned themselves into existence on my sons' chests. They were children, 9 and 7 years old, screaming in pain as prophecy fulfilled itself." He looked at Calix and Finian. "You have carried those marks ever since, waiting for your destined mates." "Destined mates?" Calix's voice was sharp with skepticism. "You are saying fate predetermined who we would bond with before we could even speak? The prophecy is ancient and clear. Twins marked by eclipse shall find mates marked in mirror. When united, their power becomes fourfold." Hadrian's expression was grave. "I have spent 17 years searching for these girls. After my sons were marked, I sent searchers throughout the kingdom. But you had already vanished." "How?" Serene demanded, finding her voice. "If you were searching, how did you not find us?" Hadrian's face contorted with frustration and regret. "The slavers who took you from Shadowfen's ruins kept no records. You were sold and resold multiple times under false names. Your marks were likely covered, hidden deliberately. I searched for years, visiting packs, questioning merchants, following every whisper of rumor. Eventually," his voice broke, "eventually I believed you had died, that the prophecy would never be fulfilled. Until we arrived here," Leora whispered, "until you danced at the festival. I saw the marks glowing through your dresses. I saw you move in perfect synchronization, performing rituals you could never have learned. I knew." Hadrian's hands shook. "I have been protecting you in secret since then, knowing that someone in this castle wants you dead before the prophecy can be fulfilled." "Who?" Finian asked, his voice tight. "Lord Corvus." The name fell like a stone into still water. "My most trusted advisor, a man I believed was loyal for decades." Calix went rigid. "You are accusing a council member of treason based on a prophecy?" "I am stating fact based on evidence," Hadrian corrected coldly. "Corvus has a son, a young man with ambitions far beyond his station. If my heirs die without producing strong offspring, Corvus's son would be positioned to claim the throne through political maneuvering. But if you bond with your prophesied mates, if the marked ones unite as foretold, the power that union creates will make the throne unassailable for generations. So he wants to kill us," Serene said flatly, "before we can complete any bond." "Yes, and he will act soon. That is why I called you here tonight, to warn you, and to offer you a choice." Hadrian looked at each of them in turn. "The prophecy speaks of destiny, but I am not so arrogant as to believe you have no free will. You can choose to reject the mate bonds. You can choose to walk away. But if you stay, if you allow this connection to form, you will be targets for as long as Corvus draws breath." The revelation hung in the air like smoke. Then chaos erupted. "This is madness," Calix snapped. "You expect us to accept that our entire futures were predetermined before we were born? That we have no say in who we bond with? No one is forcing anything," Finian argued, turning on his brother. "But denying what is right in front of us is willful blindness. Brother, you felt it when you touched her mark. I felt it with Leora. That is not normal. That is not coincidence. It could be magic, manipulation. It is destiny. Hadrian interrupted firmly. Whether you accept it or not. Seren's fury finally boiled over. Do not speak of us as if we are not here. We are not prizes to be claimed or rejected based on what some ancient prophecy dictates. She whirled on Calix. You want to reject fate? Fine. But do not pretend this is about free will. You are afraid. Afraid that accepting the bond means admitting something is stronger than your precious control. Before Calix could respond, the protection circle flickered. Hadrian's head snapped up. Someone is breaching the wards. Someone with significant power. The door exploded inward. Mercenaries poured through. 8, 10, 12 of them, armed with silver blades and crossbows. Their eyes held the glazed look of wolves given something to suppress their natural submission instinct. Behind them, Lord Corvus's voice echoed. Kill the twin Omegas! The princes are secondary targets. Make it quick. Calix shifted instantly, his massive black wolf tearing into the first 3 attackers with brutal efficiency. Finian grabbed both twins, shoving them behind Hadrian as he too shifted. The Alpha King's transformation was terrifying. A wolf larger than his sons, fur streaked silver and black, radiating dominance that should have made the mercenaries flee. But these were not normal soldiers. They attacked without fear. Protect the girls! Hadrian's telepathic voice boomed through the minds of his sons. Seren grabbed a fallen blade. When a mercenary lunged for Leora, Seren threw herself between them. The blade slashed across her arm, drawing blood. She stabbed upward instinctively, catching the man in the shoulder. Leora was frozen, her lifelong fear paralyzing her completely. Another attacker circled around Finian's wolf. The mercenary raised his crossbow, aimed directly at Leora's heart. No! Finian's wolf leaped, taking the bolt meant for Leora in his flank. He yelped, crashing to the ground. Calix battled 3 at once, his movements a blur of fang and claw. But even he could not be everywhere. A silver blade slashed deep across his ribs, blood sprayed across stone. Seren screamed. She and Leora stood back to back now, surrounded. Hadrian was pinned by 4 mercenaries. The princes were down, injured, struggling to rise. Together! Leora gasped, reaching for Seren's hand. Their fingers locked. And something inside both of them exploded. Power surged through their joined hands, racing up their arms, flooding their chests where the crescent marks burned white-hot. The shift that took them was nothing like what other shifters described. This was ecstasy, completion, coming home. 2 wolves stood where the girls had been. Identical, massive, their fur pure white that seemed to glow from within. The crescent marks on their shoulders blazed silver, casting light so intense the mercenaries cried out and shielded their eyes. Through a bond that had always existed but never manifested, the sisters felt each other's thoughts, each other's power. They were separate beings, but in this moment, they were also one. As one entity, they turned to face the attackers. Ancient power rolled off them in waves, the power of prophecy fulfilled, of destiny claimed. The mercenaries tried to run, but it was far too late. The white wolves lunged with synchronized precision, and the battle's tide turned irrevocably. Chapter 6. White Fire. The 2 white wolves moved as one entity, their power resonating through the chamber in waves that made the stone walls tremble. Their crescent marks blazed like twin stars, and where their light touched the mercenaries, the men screamed and fell back, unable to withstand the ancient magic radiating from the marked ones. Seren's wolf was fury incarnate. Aggressive, precise, lethal. She tore through attackers with savage efficiency, her teeth finding throats with instinctual knowledge she had never possessed before. Every movement was calculated to protect, to defend, to eliminate threats to her pack. Leora's wolf was shadow-made flesh, swift, unpredictable, deadly in her silence. She moved between enemies like water, striking from angles they never saw coming. The girl who had spent her life learning to be invisible had become a predator who used that skill to devastating effect. Together, they were unstoppable. The mercenaries who had seemed so formidable moments ago crumbled against ancestral power awakened. Within minutes, the attackers lay dead or dying. The sisters stood panting, their white fur stained red, their eyes glowing silver in the candlelight. Hadrian shifted back to human form, his wounds already healing with alpha speed. "By all the ancient wolves," he breathed, staring at the twins. "You are magnificent." Calix limped forward, the deep slash across his ribs still bleeding. Finian struggled up as well, the crossbow bolt protruding from his flank. Both brothers stared at the white wolves with expressions caught between awe and something deeper, more primal. The twins shifted back, their human forms reappearing. They stood unconcerned with modesty, power still crackling around them, making their marks glow. "We can sense them," Seren said, her voice carrying strange harmonics. "All the traitors in the castle. Their loyalty to Corvus marks their auras like rot. We can find every single one. Then we hunt," Hadrian said grimly, tossing them robes from a chest. "Calix, can you fight? Try to stop me." Calix's voice was strained but determined. He looked at Seren with new eyes, seeing not just a servant or even a prophesied mate, but a warrior queen in her own right. "I will follow your lead." "As will I," Finian added, moving to stand beside Leora. "Show us who betrayed our family." What followed was a hunt unlike any Valcrest had ever witnessed. The white wolves raced through corridors, their combined senses creating a map of every traitor's location. Guards loyal to Hadrian followed, capturing conspirators who found themselves unable to lie when confronted by the twins' penetrating gazes. "You met with Lord Corvus 4 times last month," Seren said to a minor noble, her eyes boring into his. "You accepted gold to poison the wine cellars when given the signal." The man tried to deny it, but his aura flared with sickly green deception. The words died in his throat, replaced by confession that spilled out against his will. By dawn, 37 conspirators were in custody. The dungeons overflowed with traitors, from servants to nobles, all part of Corvus's web of ambition and treachery. But the man himself had vanished. "He will try to claim the throne room," Hadrian said as they gathered. Healers had tended Calix and Finian's wounds. "It is what I would do. Make a final stand for power before fleeing. Then we go to him," Seren said. She and Leora stood side by side, still in their borrowed robes, looking every inch the royal destiny they carried. He cannot have gotten far. They moved as a group through the castle. Dawn light filtered through windows, illuminating destruction from the night's battle. Servants whispered and pointed as they passed. The Alpha King, his sons, and 2 white wolves flanking them. Word had spread quickly throughout Valcrest. The marked ones had revealed themselves. The throne room doors stood open. Inside, Lord Corvus waited. He had dressed in stolen formal robes, attempting to project authority he no longer possessed. He stood before Hadrian's throne, but did not sit on it. Even in his desperation, some instinct warned him against that final blasphemy. A loyal guard knelt before him, Corvus's silver blade pressed to the man's throat, hard enough to draw blood. "Stay back," Corvus called out, "or this man dies, and his blood is on your hands." "You are surrounded, Corvus," Hadrian said, walking forward slowly. "There is no escape. Face justice with whatever dignity remains to you." "Dignity?" Corvus laughed, the sound unhinged. "You speak of dignity while elevating bastard orphans to positions they have no right to claim? Those twins are nothing. Common Omega blood with delusions of grandeur. They are the fulfillment of prophecy," Hadrian said coldly. "Something you tried desperately to prevent because your ambitions for your son could not survive their existence." "My son deserves the throne more than your whelps. He is strong, intelligent, bred for power." "Your son is in custody as we speak," Hadrian interrupted. "Arrested this morning for his role in your conspiracy. He will be stripped of all titles and exiled alongside you." Corvus's face went white, then purple with rage. "No, he knew nothing. I protected him from—" "He knew everything," Calix said flatly. "We have his signed confession. He helped you plan the attack, recruited the mercenaries, arranged for weapons. Your son is as guilty as you are." The blade at the guard's throat pressed harder. Blood trickled down the man's neck. "Then I have nothing to lose. These twins will die here, now, or this guard bleeds out before your eyes. We will give ourselves to you," Seren announced suddenly. Every head whipped toward her. Calix's hand shot out as if to stop her, but she stepped forward. "Release your hostage, and we will come to you." "Serene, no!" Calix's voice cracked with command and desperate fear. "Trust me," she said quietly. meeting his eyes with absolute certainty. Then louder, to Corvus, "We are what you wanted, are we not? The obstacles to your power. Take us, and let the innocent live." Corvus's eyes gleamed with sick triumph. "Finally, some sense. Approach slowly. Both of you." The twins walked forward, hand in hand. Their marks began to glow, but subtly, as if they were trying unsuccessfully to hide their power. Corvus watched them with hungry anticipation, the blade lowering slightly from the guard's throat. "That is close enough," he said, when they were 10 feet away. "Now, kneel before your betters and accept your fate." "We kneel to no traitor," Leora said, her voice ringing clear and strong through the hall. The girl who had been too terrified to speak for 17 years now commanded the room with absolute authority. And then she moved. For her entire life, Leora had perfected the art of being underestimated. She appeared meek, frightened, harmless, but her wolf was none of those things. She shifted mid-leap, a blur of white fur and silver light, and her jaws closed around Corvus's wrist with crushing force before he could process what was happening. The blade clattered to the stone floor. Corvus screamed, trying desperately to wrench free. But Seren was already moving too, her own shift instantaneous. 2 white wolves bore him to the ground, their teeth at his throat, their combined power pressing down on him with the weight of destiny itself. "Confess." Seren's voice echoed directly in Corvus's mind, the alpha command she had inherited from prophecy making his will crumble like ash. "Confess everything before your peers." Corvus had no choice. The words poured out in a torrent, how he had orchestrated the destruction of Shadowfen Pact to eliminate witnesses to his plans, how he had paid the slavers specifically to take the marked twins and sell them where they would never be found, how he had spent 17 years consolidating power while positioning his son as the alternative heir. Every dark secret, every manipulation, every murder he had ordered or committed personally, all laid bare before the assembled court. When he finished, silence filled the throne room like a physical presence. Hadrian stepped forward, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. "Lord Corvus, you are guilty of conspiracy to commit regicide, orchestrating mass murder, slavery, and 17 years of continuous treason against the crown. The sentence is ancient and final. Permanent exile in wolf form. Your human self will be locked away forever. You will live out your remaining years as a beast, alone and slowly descending into madness. Death would be kinder." Corvus spat through bloodied lips. "I know," Hadrian said without mercy. "Which is precisely why you will live." The curse was spoken in the old tongue, dark magic swirling around Corvus like smoke. His human form locked away, sealed behind barriers he could never break. He shifted one final time, and a mangy gray wolf stood where a man had been, without the intelligence to strategize or the humanity to feel regret, driven by pure animal instinct and growing confusion. The wolf that had been Corvus fled through the open doors into the forest beyond Valcrest, never to return. Silence held for 3 heartbeats. Then Hadrian turned to the twins, still in their wolf forms, still radiating power. "All hail the marked ones, Princess Seren and Princess Leora, bearers of the ancient prophecy, destined mates of the royal heirs, defenders of Valcrest." The assembled court dropped to their knees as one. Guards, nobles, servants, all bowed before the white wolves who had saved the kingdom. The twins shifted back, accepting formal robes from attendants. They looked at each other, then at their king, then at the 2 princes who watched them with such intensity, it made the air crackle between them. By evening, the seamstresses had created gowns worthy of the occasion. Seren wore cloth of gold that caught the light with every movement, making her look like living flame. Leora's gown was pure silver, shimmering like moonlight on water. They stood before the full court, their marks visible and glowing faintly, their heads held high. Hadrian presented them formally, recounting their story. The tragedy of Shadowfen, the years of suffering, the triumph of prophecy fulfilled. When he finished, there was not a dry eye in the hall. "These twins," he said, his voice breaking with emotion, "were stolen and lost, but destiny would not be denied. Welcome them home." The court erupted in cheers that shook the rafters. But for Seren and Leora, the most important moment came after the formalities ended. Calix approached Seren where she stood, needing air after the overwhelming ceremony. "I was wrong," he said without preamble. "About fate, about bonds, about you, about everything. Oh, watching you fight, seeing your courage and power, understanding finally that you make me stronger rather than weaker. I realized something crucial." He knelt before her as tradition demanded when requesting permission to court. "I do not care if fate dictated this bond. I would choose you regardless of any prophecy. May I court you properly, Seren? Not because destiny demands it, but because my heart does?" Seren's throat tightened with emotion. "You may, Calix, and I accept your suit freely." Inside the castle, Finian found Leora in the library, her sanctuary. "May I join you?" he asked gently. She nodded, and he sat beside her in comfortable silence before finally speaking. "You were incredible today. Brave beyond any measure I have ever witnessed. I was terrified. That is what makes it courage." He took her hand carefully. "Leora, I know everything has changed impossibly fast. You went from servant to prophesied mate in mere weeks. But I need you to know, I want to court you. Not because marks bind us, but because when I am with you, I become the person I was always meant to be." Leora looked at him with those honey-colored eyes that had haunted him since childhood. "I accept, Finian. I choose this path. I choose you." In different corners of the castle that had become their home, 2 princes and 2 prophesied mates began courtships that would reshape Valcrest forever. The marked ones had found each other at last, and the kingdom would never be the same. Chapter 7. Bound by Choice. The traditional courtship period began with all the formality Valcrest protocol demanded, but Calix had never been one for tradition when it interfered with what mattered. On the 3rd morning after accepting Seren's courtship, he arrived at her chambers before dawn with training gear instead of flowers. "Get dressed," he said through the door. "We have work to do." Seren emerged wearing the leather breeches and tunic he had sent, her hair braided back for combat. Most princes bring poetry during courtship. Most princes court delicate flowers who need protection. He led her to the training yard where weapons waited. "You are a warrior. I will treat you as one." They trained daily after that, their sessions growing increasingly intense. Calix pushed her hard, never holding back, never making allowances. When she made mistakes, he corrected her sharply. When she succeeded, his praise was genuine and hard-won. "Again," he ordered, after she disarmed him for the 5th time that morning. "You are dropping your guard after the strike." A real opponent would be unconscious, Seren shot back, but she adjusted her stance. They sparred with words as much as blades. He challenged every opinion she expressed about strategy and leadership. She gave as good as she got, questioning his approaches and offering alternatives that sometimes proved superior to his own plans. "You are insufferable," she told him one afternoon after a particularly heated debate. "You are stubborn," he countered. "Good. You need someone who will not simply agree with everything you say." Calix smiled then, rare and genuine. "I know. That is precisely why I want you." The diplomatic crisis came 6 weeks into their courtship. 2 packs on Valcrest's northern border had been feuding over hunting grounds for generations. The conflict had recently escalated to bloodshed, threatening to drag neighboring territories into war. Hadrian decided to send his children to mediate, testing their readiness to lead. "Seren will lead the negotiations," he announced to the council's surprise. "Calix will provide security and support." It was the first time anyone had placed Seren in command over the future Alpha King. Calix nodded without hesitation. "As you command, Father." "My mate's diplomatic skills exceed my own." They traveled north with a small guard. The feuding alphas were both stubborn males who initially refused to even look at Seren when she tried to speak. "I negotiate with princes, not females who have been servants for barely 3 months," one growled. Calix's response was immediate and cold. "You will address my mate with respect, or you will answer to me personally. She leads these negotiations. Accept that, or leave and face Valcrest's consequences." The Alpha backed down, and negotiations began. Seren spent 3 days listening to grievances from both sides, mapping territories, reviewing historical agreements. Where others saw irreconcilable differences, she found common ground. The disputed hunting lands could be shared on seasonal rotation. Neither pack would lose face, and both would gain access to resources they currently fought over. By the 4th day, Both alphas had agreed to her terms. A treaty was signed, preventing a war that would have devastated the region. That night, as they prepared to return home, Calix found Seren standing alone under the stars. "You were magnificent," he said quietly. "The way you commanded that room, the way you saw solutions no one else could find. You did not just prevent a war. You created a framework that could resolve conflicts across the kingdom. I only did what made sense." "No." He turned her to face him, his hands on her shoulders. "You did what makes you an extraordinary leader. Watching you work, I realized something crucial." His ice-blue eyes burned with intensity. "You make me better, Seren. Your vision complements my strength. Your diplomacy balances my aggression. You complete me. Calix, I love you," he said, voice rough with emotion. "Not because marks say I should, but because you are exactly who I need, who I want." She pulled him down and kissed him, pouring 17 years of loneliness into that connection. Calix responded with equal fervor, his arms wrapping around her as if he would never let go. "Complete the bond with me," he said when they broke apart. "Be my mate, my Luna, my partner in all things. Here? Now? Under the stars, as tradition demands." They shifted together, their wolves racing through the forest to a clearing where moonlight fell unobstructed. There, surrounded by ancient trees and sacred silence, they completed the claiming ritual. It was primal and perfect, the mate bond snapping into place with such force that both gasped. When they shifted back to human form, the mark on Calix's chest glowed in perfect synchronization with Serene's shoulder. "Mine," he murmured against her skin. "Ours," she corrected, and felt his smile. Meanwhile, Finian courted Leora with gentleness that gradually dismantled every defense she had built. He took her beyond the castle walls for the first time in her life. They rode horses to meadows she had never known existed, climbed hills to see views that stole her breath, visited villages where children played freely. "I never knew the world could be so beautiful," Leora whispered, watching sunset paint the sky. "It always was. You just were never allowed to see it." Slowly, Leora began to understand what Finian had been trying to show her. She was not weak. She had survived 17 years of cruelty through strength most wolves could not fathom. Her quietness was not cowardice but wisdom. Her caution was survival skill honed to perfection. "You are the strongest person I know," Finian told her one evening. The turning point came during a ritual hunt. It was tradition for courting couples to hunt together in wolf form. They ranged through forests, moving in perfect synchronization. They were tracking deer when they stumbled upon a wounded boar. The creature, maddened by pain, charged. Finian dodged, but his paw caught on a root. He went down, and the boar's tusks drove toward his exposed throat. Leora did not think. She acted. Her white wolf slammed into the boar from the side, jaws closing on its neck with killing precision. The beast thrashed, but she held firm until it stopped moving. When they shifted back, Finian stared at her in awe. "You saved my life. You would have done the same for me." "Yes. But you have spent your whole life being told you were helpless. Yet when it mattered, you did not hesitate." He took her face in his hands. "Leora, you are not broken. You never were." For the first time since childhood, Leora believed it. She kissed him then, tentative at first, then with growing confidence. "I choose you," she said clearly. "I choose this bond. I choose us." They completed their claiming at the sacred spring, where legends said the first Luna had been blessed. The water reflected moonlight as they joined, and when the bond settled into place, both felt rightness resonate through their souls. Back at the castle, 4 marks began to glow simultaneously. The connection between all 4 intensified, forming a perfect circle of power that pulsed with ancient magic. Hadrian assembled the court days later. "The mate bonds are complete. The marked ones have fulfilled the prophecy." He looked at his children with joy and pride. "I am abdicating, not from weakness, but from wisdom. Valcrest will be ruled by King Calix and Queen Seren in matters of war and strategy, and by King Finian and Queen Leora in matters of law and diplomacy. 4 rulers, balanced and unified. The coronation happened under a full moon. Seren and Leora, who had been slaves, now wore crowns. The prophecy had not stolen their choices. It had given them the opportunity to transform fate into love. Chapter 8. Legacy of Light. 3 years had passed since the coronation that changed Valcrest forever. The castle that had once been a prison for 2 Omega slaves now stood as a beacon of hope for wolves across the kingdom. Queen Seren stood in the council chamber, reviewing the latest reforms with deliberate care. Her cloth of gold gown caught the morning light. But it was her eyes, those honey-colored eyes that had once belonged to a servant, that commanded absolute attention. The Omega Protection Act will be enacted across all packs under Valcrest's jurisdiction, she announced, her voice carrying the authority she had earned through blood and prophecy. No Omega can be sold, traded, or held against their will. Those found violating this law will face immediate trial and punishment. The council members nodded their agreement. None dared challenge her anymore. They had learned that Queen Seren did not simply rule, she transformed. Every law she proposed came from lived experience, from 17 years of understanding exactly what needed to change. Furthermore, she continued, we are establishing safe houses in every major pack. Omegas fleeing abuse will have sanctuary there, no questions asked. Lord Barrett, an older counselor who had survived Corvus's purge, spoke carefully. Your Majesty, these reforms are unprecedented. Some traditionalist packs may resist. Then they will learn to adapt or face consequences. Seren's voice was steel wrapped in silk. I lived what they inflict. I will not allow it to continue. King Calix stood beside his mate, his presence a wall of support. The Queen speaks with my full authority. These laws are not suggestions. In another wing of the castle, Queen Leora worked in what had become known as the Shadow Chamber, her network of information gatherers who reported directly to her. The girl who had once been invisible now commanded the most sophisticated intelligence operation Valcrest had ever seen. Report, she said softly to the agent before her. The last of Corvus's sympathizers have been identified and removed from positions of power, Your Majesty. The kingdom is secure. Leora nodded, reviewing documents with the same careful attention she had once given to stolen books in the dead of night. And the border situation with Iron Peak? Stable. Your treaty with them holds strong. King Finian entered, carrying their daughter. The baby girl, barely 6 months old, had a crescent moon mark on her tiny shoulder that glowed faintly when both parents held her. She wanted her mother, he said with a smile. Leora's face transformed with joy as she took their daughter. Did you miss me, little one? The baby cooed, and Finian wrapped his arms around both of them. The council meeting finished? He asked. Yes, all threats neutralized. Leora looked up at him. We are safe, Finian. Truly safe. That afternoon, the 4 rulers gathered in the throne room for a ceremonial visit. Former Alpha King Hadrian, now grandfather and advisor emeritus, stood before them with an elder from a reconstructed pack. Your Majesties, the elder said, bowing deeply. On behalf of Shadowfen Pack, we thank you for your generosity. The reconstruction you funded has given our people hope again. Seren stepped forward, emotion thick in her throat. After taking power, one of her first acts had been to order Shadowfen's complete reconstruction. The pack that had been destroyed 17 years ago, where her parents had died, now thrived again under royal protection. Shadowfen is part of our history, she said. We honor it, and we honor those who died there protecting their children. My parents, Marin and Torin, were not nobles or warriors. They were simple Omegas who loved their daughters. Their memorial stands in Shadowfen's new town square, and it will stand forever. The elder's eyes filled with tears. They would be so proud of what you have become. After the elder left, Hadrian approached his children. All 4 of them, for that was how he thought of the twins now. I have news. The former Alpha of Silverpine Pack has been stripped of his title for enabling the abuse of servants, specifically you, Seren. His Beta, who you said treated you with relative kindness, has been given an honorable position in the new pack structure. Seren nodded, satisfaction clear on her face. And Ironridge? The family that held Leora is permanently banished from the kingdom. They will never harm another soul under our protection. Leora exhaled, a weight she had carried for years finally lifting. It is done then. Justice has been served. That evening, as the sun began to set, The 4 rulers climbed to the highest tower of Valcrest Castle. Calix carried twin boys, his and Siren's sons, 3 months old, both bearing matching crescent marks. The babies gurgled contentedly in their father's strong arms. From this height, they could see the entire kingdom spread before them. Forests stretched to distant mountains. Villages dotted the landscape, their evening fires beginning to glow. Peace, hard-won and carefully maintained, blanketed everything they could see. "I never imagined this," Siren said quietly, leaning against Calix. "When I was scrubbing floors in Silverpine, when I thought I was nothing and would always be nothing. I never imagined I could be standing here." "You were always destined for this," Calix murmured, kissing her temple. "The Marks knew, even when we did not." "The Marks brought us together," Siren corrected gently, "but we chose to stay. That is what matters." Leora held her daughter close, Finian's arm around both of them. "Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if we had never come to this castle, if we had lived out our lives in those terrible places." "You survived," Finian said firmly. "You would have found a way to survive anything, but I am grateful every day that fate brought you here, brought us together." "The prophecy spoke of power," Leora observed. "But the real power was learning we deserved love, that we were never the nothing they tried to make us believe we were." Hadrian joined them on the tower, his silver hair catching the dying sunlight. He looked at his grandchildren, 3 babies bearing the marks that would shape their futures, and smiled. "They will grow up differently than you did, loved from the start, protected, free to choose their own paths. That is what we fight for," Siren said, "so that no child, Omega or otherwise, ever has to suffer as we did." Calix looked at his brother, and something passed between them. Understanding, respect, partnership. Their relationship had never been stronger. Calix no longer needed to be the perfect heir, and Finian no longer lived in his shadow. They ruled together, balanced and unified. "Do you ever regret it?" Calix asked Siren suddenly. "Accepting the mate bond? Accepting this life?" Siren turned to face him fully, her hand coming up to touch the mark on his chest that glowed in perfect synchronization with her own. "Never. The journey was painful, but it led me exactly where I needed to be. It led me to you. The darkest paths," Leora added softly, "sometimes lead to the brightest lights." The sun continued its descent, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. 4 rulers stood together, their children in their arms, their kingdom at peace below them. They were not related by blood. The twins had been born to simple Omegas, the princes to a powerful Alpha King, but destiny had bound them together in ways deeper than family. The prophecy had brought them together through marks of silver and moonlight, but it was choice. Their choice, made freely, and with full hearts, that kept them united. Siren and Leora, who had been slaves, now wore crowns. Calix and Finian, who had been princes, had found queens worthy of their devotion, and Valcrest, which had allowed such cruelty to exist in its shadows, had been transformed by 4 souls brave enough to believe they deserved better. The marked ones had fulfilled their destiny, but more importantly, they had claimed their own story and written an ending that no prophecy could have predicted. One of love freely given, power responsibly wielded, and hope that would echo through generations. As night fell over the kingdom, the marks on all 7 bodies glowed softly in the darkness, a reminder that some bonds transcend explanation. Some connections are simply meant to be, and sometimes the greatest magic is not in accepting fate, but in choosing to embrace it. The prophecy was complete. The marked ones had found each other, and Valcrest would never be the same. The end.